We are tonight's entertainment.
You can't handle the truth.
The fire rises.
Pizza time.
You're a wizard, Harry.
So it begins.
You know how much I sacrifice?
You think that's air you're breathing?
Groovy.
I don't have friends. I got family.
We are sex people! 1, 2, 3, 4!
Craft Services.
Hi, Parth.
Hey, Trent. It's been a while.
No, really. It's my first time back in the pod in a while. You're looking well. What have you been eating?
Well, Trent, we're recording at 9:45 in the morning, or 9:44 to be exact.
I have to leave very soon. We're in a rush. Snappy intro.
Yeah, that's a classic Parth Trent intro. You know what I mean?
Yep. But we really took our time with this interview. Months of planning and emailing.
I looked at the email chain, and I believe it was 53 emails between me and the publicists. And
Parth,
set up.
Dare I say, worth it?
Yes, I agree. But what was also worth it was the one singular chip, Tostitos chip, that I ate. So that I could have something to eat for this intro, because I went to bed very late, probably like around 3, and then had to wake up for this intro, and I was not hungry, and then I was like, but I gotta eat something.
See, Parth, while your chip may have been worth it, my last chosen snack was not worth it, because last night I ate a whole bag of Sour Patch Kids just in my bed, like a little crazy man, and I knew as I was doing it, like, this is going to cause some stomach turmoil. Let me tell you, it did. Nice. But the only thing better than a cold Sour Patch Kid is a free Sour Patch Kid, because I stole it from work.
From Rooftop? Nice.
Well, I mean, you don't have to give all the information.
From Rooftop Cinema?
On West 37th.
In Manhattan, right?
On West 37th Street. Yeah, so...
Nick Long works there, right? Anyways.
What's the sound? Is that the intro? Can basically hear the intro music.
You can almost hear it. I really hope it doesn't cut me.
Welcome back to Craft Services, where we talk about the movies. Each week we talk about a film and hopefully have a crew member of that film to talk with us about their experience working on the picture. This week, we have... Parth, who do we got?
We have our first ever returning guest. We have production designer Ruth de Jong. She worked on Nope last time we talked with her, but this time she worked on Oppenheimer. And Trent, is this a two-parter?
Yeah. From the way you just said that, I would imagine it is a two-parter.
Yeah, it's a two-parter.
We had another awesome hour-long discussion. We'll be splitting it up into, I assume, 2 30-minute chunks. Parth, unless you're going to do like a 50-10 split. Would that make more sense?
Well, Trent, if you want to be impressed with me, I edited the entire interview the day we recorded the interview. And I believe this first part is 25 minutes.
Sometimes you edit the discussion, or you have in the past, immediately after we have it, and I wouldn't wish that upon my worst enemy.
Yeah. It's not fun. But yeah, we talked with Ruth de Jong. This part, really cool. She talks about getting involved with the movie. She finished work on Nope on a Tuesday and started work on Oppenheimer on a Wednesday.
And since this is our first return guest, I feel like it kind of like changed the structure.
The dynamic.
Not only dynamic, but I was going to say like just the general arc of the questions is usually
there's no how'd you get involved or how'd you start in the industry and stuff.
There's no like rogue questions about her PAing on There'll Be Blood, which you can find in our first episode with her. But now it's really just all Oppenheimer all the time.
It is all Oppenheimer all the time. Dare I say this is this interview is the bomb?
And we're a pot at thebomb.com. Maybe.
There's some details revealed in this episode. Explosive.
Yes.
For real, Ruth de Jong, she was very professional, more than us. And I think this interview went great.
Yes.
All right, so we'll see you at the end, guys. Cue the interview. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our interview with Ruth de Jong. She's the production designer that worked on such projects as Manchester by the Sea, Twin Peaks: The Return, Nope, for which we did an interview last year, as well as our film for today, Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer. Thank you so much for being here today, and welcome back to the show.
Thank you both. Happy to be back.
Yeah, so we talked a little bit last year about getting involved with Oppenheimer, so if you could just give us a little refresher as to how you came to meet Christopher Nolan.
Yes, of course. Well, I have Hoyte to thank for that. We were both on Nope together. I think you have to remind me, when we spoke about Nope, I was on Oppenheimer, correct? I believe.
I think if principal photography was done, I think.
We talked about how you shot in Princeton, New Jersey.
Yes,
I remember that.
So okay.
But what you were able to discuss was very limited at the time.
Right, of course. So Hoyte approached me one day on set and just said, look, I'd love to connect you with Chris and Emma. They're looking for a production designer. And I said, what? They were longtime collaborators with Nathan Crowley, who has done, I think, most all of Chris's pictures, if not all of them. And I said, absolutely, of course. And I got a call from Emma, and they invited me down to their office, and we had a great, just several hour meeting. And then that was that. And then next thing, I want to say we were just a couple weeks left of principal photography with Nope. And, Chris was like, look, I want to start immediately. So we wrapped Nope on a Tuesday, and I was in his office on a Wednesday, which I've never done.
That's awesome.
2 back-to-back features of this scope and scale. So in one sense, it was great because you have all the momentum, you have your teams, you just flow and go one right into the other. But of course, it was entirely different subject matter, different beast in its own right. And but it was exciting, and I obviously was thrilled to be able to collaborate with Hoyte again for a second time. We had such a wonderful experience on Nope together. So
at least they were both really small indie movies.
Yeah. A couple, 20, 30-day shoot, no big deal, one location.
Yeah.
So we read that you spent 10 to 12 weeks talking with Christopher Nolan about the design of the film. And could you tell us what those conversations were like, or what that time was spent doing? Yes,
every director has their way of working, which I always enjoy. It's the collaboration period in prep is so different, film to film. And Chris has a unique way where he likes to just work one-on-one with the production designer, which is incredible because you take this script and you have it was somewhere between 8 to 12 weeks. I don't remember exactly, before maybe it was, maybe 10 to 12, but you get to just dive into this script and just erect, and brainstorm about what it is you're going to do and the worlds you're going to build. And I think, not having worked with Chris before, it was also just an incredible introduction to getting to know each other and spending that time and what's important to him, what he's looking for, what he wants, what he desires from this specific picture. And obviously being the writer director, he's written it all. He's thinking about it. He's been thinking about it. I think, he started writing this, I want to say in COVID, if not before, and was so immersed in the material, the subject. So it was, we could get, I guess, down to the core very quickly. And our main focus initially was Los Alamos, and he wanted to absolutely build it from the ground up. And he had already previously gone and scouted Los Alamos during COVID. I think he and his son took a trip. They drove out there, the actual Los Alamos where Oppenheimer had set up. It's now a thriving town. It's very populated. It's very dense. There's a Starbucks on every other corner. There's strip malls. There's schools. It was, and he had said to me, he's like, look, I'd love for you to go see that. You can go see it whenever you'd like, but I've been there. I'm not interested in shooting there. So I really want to find our own Los Alamos, same idea, on a plateau in the middle of nowhere, epic vistas, expanses. And, we talked a lot about kind of early Westerns and just the vastness of those. And so initially, I think right off the bat, we were simultaneously breaking down the script, talking about Los Alamos, and also getting on an airplane and kind of starting to go scout New Mexico. And we looked at Utah, and we took a trip back east. We went to New York, we went to DC, New Jersey, and just wanted to, go back to every actual location. Berkeley, that was in the script, where Oppenheimer had existed, and but not really sure how all the puzzle pieces were going to fit together. Cast, schedule, budget, approach, how many days are we shooting, how are we doing this calendar. So it was and what was so nice about that was just we got to go scout those locations without we weren't trying to fit any of it into a structure or a schedule, or this is it, we have to shoot here. It was just absorbing it, taking it in, going to all the actual locations and then applying that to our film. And it was, to me, that was incredible, and the framework for what we were able to do, because when you don't, anytime you're going on a tech scout or a director's scout and you've got producers and crew, it's you almost can't get to the core of and just the conversations. I mean, I remember when we went to DC, we toured the entire Capitol. We went to the actual hearing room where Strauss's trial took place, and that was incredibly inspiring. And we're like, we have to shoot here. Well, no one lets you shoot at the Capitol. We're like, maybe they will. We tried very hard, but then we ended up just ditching our vehicle, and we walked from the Capitol. We walked the entire lawn, or the mall, I guess you would call it. And the mall is where all of the temp buildings, during World War II, the U.S. government put up tons, I don't even know how many, temporary buildings, and room 2022 was in one of those buildings where Strauss kind of set up Oppenheimer's demise. And I think it was just, there was something about being, and same thing in New Jersey, we walked around IAS, and we walked from the main IAS building to the director's house around the pond. It was just a lot of walking and talking and thinking and absorbing and, thinking about Oppenheimer in these circumstances, in these places, walking the grounds of Princeton, walking the grounds of Berkeley. It was, there was something about it that I think stuck with both Chris and I the entire prep, because we always could go back to that. And even if we couldn't shoot in this place or that place, the essence of what we absorbed and toured and took in contributed to what it is we needed to do. And obviously, fast forward to production started, a lot of my art department had started, and the ADs had started, producers started. So there's then all this stuff getting thrown at us with like, well, this is what we can afford. This is how many days, we're going to shoot in California and New Mexico. And we're like, but what about Princeton and Berkeley and New York and DC? It's like, we can't afford to go there. And so then it's great because you have all of this, we had it all within us, Chris and I. So we were able to kind of just let that settle and work that out. And the film, obviously, you guys both saw is how we ended up. And I think, it's fascinating how all that stuff ends up, getting just almost thrown into like a snow globe and shaken up, and then you have to rework it all. But we ended up doing the majority of Washington, D.C. in New Mexico. Both, there was a wonderful tax incentive, and it also, not moving around so many times, it just saves cost. And so that was a big challenge. We obviously ended up settling on a Los Alamos in New Mexico, which was along the same mountain range as the existing Los Alamos. So it had a lot of the same topography and the rock formations. And we were on our own little plateau, which you see. And what it did give us was an epic 360. And it gave us our own private backlot. And you're in the middle of absolutely nowhere. You're not, all the telephone poles you see, we brought in, we put up. So it really was at the core kind of what Oppenheimer was. He took these people to the middle of nowhere and commandeered this boys' school. And we utilized the boys' school, the lodge, which we was up at Los Alamos proper. So what we ended up doing when we were designing the town, we realized, I think I originally had this very elaborate town. And I wouldn't even say that it was that elaborate. It's just the actual Los Alamos was massive. And the means that the U.S. government had to throw at this project was immense, much, much more than I ever had. So, and the people to do it, not to mention we were building this town in the dead of winter in New Mexico. We were dealing with snow and rain and ice, and it was a mess. But the construction team led by Jonas Kirk was just incredible, and they persevered and pressed on. And I mean, there are days it's like we can't even get up to the plateau. We're going to have to wait. So it was a constant battle. But we ended up obviously getting the town down to something we could afford. And what Chris and I did realize after I took a visit to it myself was, Chris, there's some incredible period buildings that are untouched. Oppenheimer's house. There was this women's dormitory that we ended up turning into the interior of the T section, which was where he held all of his lectures, Oppenheimer. And we utilized the T section in the movie was behind the black and white kind of fence structure, and we utilized all the buildings you could go in and out, but the interiors were primarily at the actual Los Alamos within those period buildings, which was a huge asset to us. So we did a week up there at Los Alamos proper. And I think it was 6 days at our exterior. His office was interior, exterior, but yeah.
Yeah, in our last discussion for Nope, you talked about creating these white models of Jupiter's claim. And so was that kind of work being done on Oppenheimer? I would assume for Los Alamos, but also anywhere else. And if you could just sort of talk about the process of making that and what that sort of gives you as a production designer.
Great memory. What I like to do, I mean, there's you can do these beautiful, fancy architectural models, but that takes time, it takes money. And the great thing about these foam core white models is it shows you scale, and they can be done very quickly. And when we initially had drawn up the town, I immediately like to get a model maker going and put that into 3-dimensional form, as well as, and to just understand the scale and scope. And Chris and Hoyta can hold up cameras and you can actually shoot, and we can get little figurines to all in scale, vehicles, trees, whatever. We did this, and I think the first town I designed was about $20 million, and Chris was like, nope. But it was epic and it was wonderful, but it was just beyond, we had the rest of the movie we needed to make. But it was great because it's basically like, great, which buildings are going to the graveyard? So you're just sort of pulling them off and reconfiguring them. And It's almost like a giant game of Monopoly. It's like, not this one, not this one. And then we were able to kind of get it down to what we felt was our main street and kind of how we were going to drive up. And that was in Los Angeles. And we had that and that just sort of, I don't think we traveled it to New Mexico. We didn't need to at that point. Once we kind of signed off on the town, we, hit the ground running, building it, laying it out, and Chris and Hoyta would come out and see. I remember when I originally staked the town out, after we sort of signed off on the white model, brought Chris out, walked the whole thing, and he's like, yeah, great. This feels great. Just so you're doing that exercise of, okay, here's one end of Main Street. Here's the other end of Main Street. We had, giant 2x4s with orange flags with the carpenters at each side going, okay, that's your, so I think it's just a wonderful way to let, obviously, the director, the cinematographer, myself, understand the scale and scope of what we will have. And then it's when you're up there in the real, there's, I want to say there's a few things we ended up tweaking, but that's no problem. It's like the model allows us to arrive and then it gives us all something to just talk through too, as we're going throughout prep, and you can kind of go back to the model with the ADs, with whoever you need to, with grip and electric, we're talking about where we foresee all of our lighting and cabling and doing all that stuff. So yeah, I think it's a wonderful tool, and it's a very inexpensive, efficient tool that you can do very cheap. I mean, we had one model maker do all of it, and he would just jam. And when we make changes or cut buildings, he was, it was so, and I don't think there was too much else. I don't believe we ended up, because we built in its entirety the steel tower. We had the original drawings to that steel tower, which was actually already in existence when they found it. It was some sort of radio tower. And then they ended up utilizing it for their test, and then the bunkers we built. But we did that in the computer, but that was such a vast scale in terms of how far away the bunkers were from the deal. But we did a lot of that through Google Earth and different programs to understand, okay, here's our tower, here's our bunker, here's the hill where they're going to watch, etc. But I think the only white model was Los Alamos itself.
Okay. So in our last interview, you described your conversation with Jordan Peele about the design of Nope, and he said he wanted to have the weirdness of Twin Peaks, but with the realness of Manchester by the Sea. And I was wondering if you can similarly describe your approach to Oppenheimer through the qualities of like any other films.
Yes. It's interesting. I think the interesting part about, obviously, Nope and Us compared to an Oppenheimer, those were obviously Jordan's original scripts, as was Chris's, but it was an adaptation of a real life event and time and place. So I think the biggest difference is it wasn't so much comparing it to the essences of other films. I think there, to Jordan's projects, there was this fantastical otherworldly element combined with him wanting it to be grounded and rooted in reality, where this was entirely in reality. And we had all of the research and beyond to know exactly what it looked like. So the difference was Chris was often reminding me to completely divorce myself. I would get so engrossed in the research, and he's just like, look, I'm not making a documentary. And, he'd often say to me, he's like, this cannot be a snooze fest. I'm selling popcorn. I am not, I think I would just really lean into it and say, but, so what we often were, what Chris's biggest thing was wanting to fight the contrivedness of an overly period film, meaning the film is filled with it's 1954 or it's 1938 or 1942. And he wanted it to have a timeless feel, and almost be very modern in its own right, in the way that, if an example would be if it was like 32, I was like, well, no one would really be driving a brand new 1932 vehicle. They'd be probably driving a car from the 20s, and he's just like, but the cars from the 20s, the Model Ts, were so boxy and specific and almost ornate and distracting that he's like, I much prefer almost the frame from 1937. And of course I'm going, oh my gosh, they're going to eat us alive on Reddit and go, it's not 1937 and it's 1932. And I think the reality is, and all of that, at the end of the day, yes, sure, you could then go through, but I think that's not the point of film, actually.
Right.
No. Yeah.
It's sort of like you're recreating an essence, you're recreating a moment in time. And while we wanted to be accurate and be correct, there's also just an artistry to we could do whatever we wanted, essentially. I mean, it was, but I think the main thing is Chris and I wanted to keep the audience. We wanted to take them right there, and you wanted to feel as though you were. I think we just wanted them to be lost in the film and not all these distractions,
conscious of all the details.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And I think, so there was not sort of a film reference of sorts that we were using in that way. For this, it was using the actual research and then essentially designing the film we wanted to design, and really, wanting to take everyone to that place, both emotionally, subconsciously, but in reality. And for instance, it's like we didn't end up in this epic hearing room where it's a very mid-century, it was built in the 40s, but very modern, 40-foot walls, sleek wood and brass. And we ended up in New Mexico in downtown Santa Fe, in one of their government buildings. The architecture was entirely different, but I don't think anyone ever guessed or went like, oh, that's not at the Capitol. Like, you just don't even, we rebuilt the desk exactly. But so I think we got to take, our own creative approaches to recreating that moment. But really beyond that moment, it was about what was happening, the actors. It's like when they walked into that ballroom that looked like it had all the kind of chairs stacked up and the big floral arrangements, Chris is like, what if we took a New York City hotel? And I remember our Lauren Sandoval, who is our incredible researcher, she's like, well, Chris, this meeting did not take place in New York. I think it took place in DC. And Chris is like, sure. But again, I think those details, it's like, and so I think we were we ended up, let me get back up, I'm jumping around. We ended up, that specific scene we did it was kind of like a great room in a girls' private school in Albuquerque. And I was like, I want to make it look like the Carlisle in the 1940s. And we did. And we brought in, these period flower arrangements, and that just sort of tried to, the window treatments, the tables. And the idea is that they had just commandeered this conference room that had probably been a wedding that day or was going to be a wedding and was getting set up. And they just, and it was Chris's idea entirely. He's like, I want this massive floor arrangement that the actors are having to and just all those little things that give his film life and just create this. It's very random and kind of just, but also very natural if you think about it, versus, we could have absolutely gone to like some sleek conference room that fit exactly the amount of men that were going to be there and discussing this. But I loved the fluidity that Chris just kind of kept things very raw and real and honest and natural. I think we really wanted to lean into naturalism as much as possible without kind of contriving each scene to be like, well, it took place at, you know. So, and I think the whole flow of the film, you end up getting, because of those elements, you get completely lost in it. And you're just thinking, it doesn't matter if, you know, New York, DC, Boston, whatever. It's like, it was a conference room, or in that case, it was like a ballroom. In that case, it was actually a girls' school in the middle of Albuquerque. So wild.
What an interview. I just wish there was more.
Me too. But, you know, maybe, like we said, after the next cool movie she does, maybe she can be our first three-time guest.
Oh, I was going to say, I hope there was just more of this interview.
Parth, I have good news for you in that case.
What?
There is. All you have to do
God.
is wait 7 more calendar days. And
the day of the Lord, right?
Yeah, that's the day we release episodes, Sundays, and there will be another like 30 minutes for you to listen to.
Wow. Now that has brightened my day. Thank you everybody for listening. Thank you again to Ruth de Jong for hopping on for an hour-long discussion.
Wait, Parth, don't you mean opping on?
Ooh. This guy's crazy. Yes, thank you so much for hopping on to this discussion. We will see you guys next week for part 2 of our discussion, or of our interview with Ruth de Jong. And Trent, can this be, like, where is this going to be available even?
We're in a little bit, or rather, I'm in a little bit of a rush, so I'm going to make it snappy. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcasts, we're there. And if you are listening to us, thank you. And leave a positive 5-star review. Write some words if possible. That would be appreciated. Is that it?
Yeah. We'll see you next week, guys. Let's see if Trent catches his train.
Oh, no, I'm not.
Let's
going
see
to
if
rooftop.
Trent can drive to where he needs to drive.
Parth, you know in Eyes Wide Shut where Nicole Kidman goes, "Did you like getting your little titties squeezed?"
Bye.
Bye, Parth.